Trapmore gang, you remember when Young Thug was getting aired out for all of his jail phone calls being leaked? Well, it's not looking too good for Lil Durk and the OTF crew.
Stop everything. Because if these leaked calls are real, Lil Durk might be standing at the edge of the biggest controversy of his entire career. We're talking about incriminating phone calls, whispered conversations, and audio snippets that were never meant to see daylight. And the wildest part? This doesn't sound like the end of the story, it sounds like the beginning. Why are insiders suddenly panicking? Why are certain posts being deleted in real time? And why are fans saying this changes everything? Social media is already in meltdown mode. Comment sections are on fire. Reaction channels are racing to upload. And anonymous sources are claiming these calls expose patterns, power plays, and decisions that were carefully hidden behind fame and loyalty. Is this just another viral rumor blown out of proportion? Or are we watching the first domino fall in a much larger collapse? Because when leaked calls start circulating, history tells us one thing: more is coming. More audio, more receipts, more names dragged into the spotlight. And if what fans are hearing is even halfway accurate, Durk isn't just trending, he's being investigated by the internet itself. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear isn't just shocking. It might be the start of something much darker. So let's rewind, because this story didn't start with the leaked calls. It started years ago, quietly behind studio doors, private phone lines, and inner circle conversations that fans were never meant to hear. Lil Durk has always walked a dangerous line between street credibility and mainstream power. To his fans, he's the voice of survival. To the industry, he's a brand. But to insiders? He's been a walking contradiction for a long time. And now, with these leaked calls surfacing, people are starting to ask the question nobody wanted to ask out loud: how much has been hidden in plain sight? According to anonymous insiders, these calls allegedly paint a picture very different from the public image. We're not talking about one careless conversation. We're talking about a pattern. Strategic calls. Emotional calls. Calls that suggest pressure, influence, and decisions being made far away from microphones and cameras. Fans are shocked because this isn't a diss track or a vague lyric. This is raw audio energy. This is tone, timing, pauses. The kind of stuff you can't edit or spin once people hear it. And let's be honest, Lil Durk has been surrounded by controversy before. From public beefs to legal headlines, from fallen associates to tense alliances, his name has never been far from chaos. But this feels different. This feels personal. Insiders claim the calls allegedly reference situations fans were told were handled, issues that were supposedly in the past, and relationships that were publicly portrayed as solid. Suddenly, those narratives don't look so solid anymore. What makes this even more explosive is the timing. These calls didn't surface during a quiet moment. They surfaced when Durk's name was already trending, when fans were already dissecting his moves, and when the internet was already hungry for the next big collapse. That's why reaction channels jumped on it instantly. That's why comment sections look like crime scenes. Because people don't just hear drama, they hear confirmation. Sources claim the calls allegedly reveal frustration, control, and conversations that hint at behind-the-scenes pressure. Not direct confessions. Not cartoon villain stuff. But enough implication to make people uncomfortable. Enough to make fans replay clips again and again, listening for subtext. Listening for what wasn't said. Listening for who else might be involved. And let's talk about reputation. Lil Durk's rise wasn't accidental. It was calculated, strategic, and built on loyalty narratives. But leaked calls have a way of cracking those narratives wide open. Because when people hear a voice instead of a headline, perception changes. Suddenly, fans aren't debating rumors, they're debating tone. Was that anger? Was that stress? Was that pressure? Or was that someone realizing too late that phones record everything? Online detectives wasted no time. Old interviews resurfaced. Lyrics were re-examined. Past statements that once sounded harmless now sound suspicious. Fans are connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. And once that happens, the internet doesn't slow down. It accelerates. Every old clip becomes evidence. Every silence becomes confirmation. What's also raising eyebrows is who hasn't spoken. No immediate denial. No aggressive shutdown. No clear explanation. Just silence. And in internet culture, silence is never neutral. Silence is interpreted. Silence is dissected. Silence becomes content. And the longer it lasts, the louder the speculation gets. Insiders claim these calls are just fragments, not the full picture. And that's what has people nervous. Because fragments suggest there's more. More recordings. More conversations. More voices that haven't been heard yet. And once one leak is validated by public reaction, others tend to follow. That's how these stories grow legs. That's how they spiral. Fans aren't just shocked. They're unsettled. Because this isn't entertainment anymore. It feels invasive. It feels like watching a private world crack open. And whether the calls prove anything legally or not doesn't even matter at this stage. Public opinion has already started shifting. And once perception moves, careers feel it. Right now, Lil Durk isn't just being talked about. He's being analyzed. Every move, every post, every absence is being logged by an audience that thinks it's watching something historic unfold. And if insiders are right, this chapter isn't the climax. It's the opening act. Because when incriminating calls leak, the question is never, is this real? The question is always, what comes next? Once the leaked calls hit the internet, the story stopped being about Lil Durk alone. It turned into a full-scale digital investigation. Screenshots, audio snippets, anonymous threads. Everyone suddenly became an expert. And according to so-called insiders, what leaked publicly was only a small portion of a much bigger audio trail. The kind of trail that doesn't just expose moments, it exposes behavior. Anonymous sources online claim these calls allegedly point to lavish spending discussions, pressure-filled conversations, and strategic decisions that were never meant to leave private circles. Not just casual talk, but conversations that suggest influence, urgency, and power dynamics at play. Fans started asking uncomfortable questions. Who was really in control? Who was benefiting? And who was being protected? Reaction channels wasted no time. Titles screamed, "This is bad," "Durk caught slipping," and "Why does this sound familiar?" Clips were slowed down. Pauses were analyzed. Background noise became suspicious. Even breathing patterns were turned into theories. It sounds ridiculous until you realize millions of people were doing it at the same time. Then came the so-called leaked reports. Documents with blurred names. Insider notes with redacted lines. Threads claiming connections between money, loyalty, and silence. None of it verified. All of it viral. Fans didn't care if it was confirmed. They cared that it felt believable. And in internet culture, feeling believable is more powerful than facts. One anonymous account claimed the calls referenced high-stakes spending habits, private travel, and clean-up conversations meant to manage public perception. Another claimed the tone alone was enough to suggest panic behind the scenes. Whether true or exaggerated didn't matter. The damage was already happening in real time. Public reactions were brutal. Some fans defended Lil Durk, saying leaked calls without context mean nothing. Others said the tone alone was incriminating. Comment sections turned into war zones. Longtime supporters felt betrayed. Casual listeners felt validated. And neutral viewers? They grabbed popcorn and refreshed their feeds. Memes made it worse. A lot worse. Clips were paired with dramatic music. Fake subtitles were added. When you realize the call was recorded, memes flooded timelines. Sarcasm ruled the conversation, and humor became a weapon. Because once something becomes funny online, it becomes unforgettable. Then came the imaginary insiders. People claiming to know people who know people. Alleged ex-associates. Friends of friends. All dropping vague but damaging statements like, "This doesn't surprise me," or "Y'all don't know half of it." Those phrases spread faster than the actual audio. Live stream debates ran for hours. Some creators treated it like a courtroom. Others treated it like reality TV. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had a timeline. And every silence from Lil Durk's camp made things worse. Because in the internet age, denial can be ignored. silence is interpreted as confirmation. Some fans started revisiting past controversies. Old headlines, old cases, old lyrics that suddenly sounded different. Lines that once felt poetic now felt suspicious. Bars that were once artistic now felt like confessions. And once fans start rewriting history, there's no rewind button. What really escalated the scandal was the idea that these calls were part of a series. Not a one-off mistake. A pattern. That's what people latched onto. Because patterns suggest intent. And intent is what turns drama into downfall narratives. People began speculating about abuse of power, about influence over others, about conversations where outcomes were allegedly decided before the public ever knew there was a problem. Again, nothing proven, but everything discussed. Loudly, aggressively, relentlessly. And then the hashtags started trending. Not just his name, but phrases like leaked calls, this is just the start, and audio don't lie. Once that happens, the algorithm does the rest. Videos get pushed. Clips get recommended. New audiences get pulled in who don't even know the background. They just know something feels wrong. At this point, the scandal wasn't about truth anymore. It was about momentum. And momentum online is dangerous. Because once it builds, it doesn't need facts to survive. It feeds on reaction. Industry watchers allegedly took notice too. According to speculation, people behind the scenes were watching the public temperature closely. Not reacting, just observing. Because reputations don't fall in court first, they fall online. And that's where Lil Durk found himself. Not charged, not arrested, but judged. By millions. In real time. And if these leaked calls were enough to cause this level of chaos, people started asking the question that makes everyone nervous. What happens if more leaks surface? By this point, the damage was already done. Whether the leaked calls were fully authentic, partially edited, or completely taken out of context almost stopped mattering. Because in the court of public opinion, Lil Durk wasn't waiting for a verdict. He was already on trial. The internet had decided that something felt off, and once that feeling sets in, it doesn't go away quietly. Speculation turned into prediction. Prediction turned into expectation. Fans weren't asking if there would be consequences, they were asking how bad they would be. Would labels start distancing themselves? Would collaborators quietly back away? Would upcoming projects suddenly get delayed with vague, timing issues? These are the kinds of questions that start swirling when controversy refuses to die down. Anonymous sources online claimed that behind the scenes, conversations were happening. Not dramatic confrontations, quiet evaluations. The kind where people reassess risk. Where managers ask uncomfortable questions. Where partnerships are reviewed not for talent, but for optics. And optics matter more than ever when leaked calls are being replayed millions of times by people who already think they've figured you out. Fans started watching Lil Durk differently. Every post felt calculated. Every silence felt heavy. Every move felt defensive. And silence, once again, became the loudest sound in the room. No aggressive denial. No clear explanation. Just distance. And distance online is interpreted as damage control. Then came the talk of investigations. Not official ones, internet investigations. The kind that don't need warrants or facts, just screenshots and imagination. People started building timelines, connecting unrelated events, and drawing conclusions that felt convincing enough to spread. Old controversies resurfaced. Past associations were dragged back into the spotlight. Names that had been quiet for years were suddenly trending again. Some fans began saying this felt like the start of a life sentence. Not legal, reputational. Because once you're associated with leaked calls, secrecy, and alleged behind-the-scenes manipulation, it sticks. Even if nothing comes of it officially, the label follows you. Forever searchable. Forever clickable. Others pushed back, calling it exaggerated, irresponsible, and dangerous. They argued that leaked audio without full context is meaningless, that narratives are being manufactured for views, that the internet loves to destroy its own stars. And maybe they're right. But here's the problem. The internet doesn't reward patience. It rewards reaction. and reactions were everywhere. Creators were milking the story daily. Update videos. New details clips. This changes everything, thumbnails. The story refused to cool off because it was profitable not to let it cool off. Every new angle kept it alive. Every speculative sentence stretched the narrative further. At this stage, the fallout wasn't just about Lil Durk anymore. It was about what happens when private conversations become public entertainment, when audio leaks become storyline fuel, when fans feel entitled to explanations that may never come. Industry insiders allegedly began treating the situation as a case study. What happens when control over the narrative is lost? How quickly can public trust erode? And how impossible is it to rebuild once the internet has decided you're hiding something? And here's the most dangerous part. People are now expecting more. More leaks, more audio, more names, more chaos. Because once a story is labeled just the start, the audience waits for the sequel. And if it never comes, they'll invent it. So the question isn't whether Lil Durk survives this moment. The question is how long this moment follows him. Because viral scandals don't end, they fade into references, memes, and remember when moments that resurface anytime your name trends again. And now it's your turn. Do you think these leaked calls mean something serious? Or is the internet doing what it does best, turning noise into a narrative? Is this the beginning of a larger exposure, or just another exaggerated chapter in online drama culture? Should artists be held accountable for private conversations, or has curiosity crossed a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue, debate, disagree. Because this story isn't over, it's evolving in real time. If you want to stay ahead of the next leak, the next twist, and the next explosive reveal, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because in this space, silence doesn't last, and neither do secrets.